The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Shepnaz Podcast. Hey, if you are familiar with the podcast, you know what today is. It's everybody's favorite day that's in the middle of the week.
Worship Wednesday.
Woo, baby! I forgot to warn you about the Worship Wednesday button, but there it is, man. Well, welcome to Worship Wednesday. Goodness gracious, I'm so excited I can't even talk. But we, as you know, have been trying some new things here on Worship Wednesday and have been inviting some people in to hear their stories. And honestly, I'm a little selfish if I'm just being real. And I've been inviting people that I just know and I love and I trust and that have had a part to play in my journey. And so welcome in the one and only Mr. Zach Carpenter, everybody. Come on, welcome him in.
Thank you. I mean, come on, stop.
Oh, please, I'm blushing.
Yes. Sorry, first time in front of a camera.
Yeah, I know, right? You've never been in front of people.
No,
You're very shy.
Never.
And
Never. I typically lead from the restroom at church.
Right,
So,
makes sense.
It's just a safe place. Good acoustics.
Yeah, it's great acoustic. It's awesome.
The best.
Well, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks,
so
man.
much
Thanks for having me. Super blessed to be here. And for those of you guys listening, you may already know, but Zach is amazing. Not this Zach, the other Zach. Yeah. Today, I guess it's
Dual
Z squared. Z squared up in the house.
Baby.
But I love Zach, believe in Zach, and I love their family and just what they're doing for the Lord. So
thanks, dude.
Blessed to be here, man.
I appreciate you. Well, I know that I would not be in the position I am and be the man I am if it wasn't for you and your leadership and pouring into my life. So thanks, dude.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
You're
appreciate you
welcome.
a lot.
Appreciate you.
Well, here on the podcast, man, we talk a lot about worship, obviously, hence the name. We were very creative with the making of that name. But really what we're kind of focusing on this podcast right now with kind of this shift that we've been making is we just want to hear other people's stories. You know, we feel like people's testimonies have power and they're not just stories that we wrote and made up. Like this is stories of where God has brought us and things God has brought us through and helped us get out of or
Absolutely.
get into. And so if people don't know who you are listening, why don't you tell us what church you're at now, your role, and then we'll dig into a little more history after that.
Well, before I forget what you were saying about your story, like that's one thing we talk about at our church at Freedom Church is like, look, people have different opinions on everything on the planet, right? Watch the news for 3.5 seconds, you know,
Facts.
But it's like people can argue about theology. They can argue about doctrine. They can argue about methodology, but they cannot argue your story.
Right.
They can't take it away.
Yep.
And so it is powerful. And so I'm thankful that we get to do that. And God used, the best teacher ever. That's what he did.
Right.
He told stories. So, how do I wrap up 45 years? I know I look 26, but how do I wrap up 45 years?
It's the light, baby.
It is the lighting. It's
youthful
good.
light.
It's really good lighting. I hope I walk out with a tan, but people at home can't tell I'm so ghosty. But yeah. Basically, the joke, I was asking Zach earlier if it's okay to say this on air, but it was like,
baby.
Basically, my story is this. My folks were super young married, got married in a Nazarene church, and then I was born and slid out onto a Nazarene platform with a mic in my hand. I mean, that's just been my life. And honestly, super thankful. The first time I sang for real, I was 4.5, sang at my sister's dedication, church of a couple hundred, and my mom is basically a concert pianist. Cool. And so she would always work with us, and so she practiced with me at home, and it wasn't like like Jesus loves me. She had me try to sing it right, and I have not looked back since.
That's awesome.
I've been singing and speaking in front of people now for over 40 years.
That's wild.
So
man. That's wild. Well, there's something too to be said about like not only growing up in that environment, right, but literally getting thrown into the deep end. Right away.
Right away.
There's lessons to be learned from that. Even thinking back. Great. Well, that's a pretty early start. So yours does get
very early start. So
story.
fast forward, sang at different churches, and then before my dad retired from the Army, he felt a call to preach at 15 years in the Army. Which for those people that don't know, 20 is when you can officially retire, and and so he wrestled with that. Felt like God said, just stay in longer. So that summer, we actually traveled, and my dad would preach, and we would all sing, and we, go to, and so we went to a bunch of churches all over our district, and I think even another district. But anyways, and so even that was like 14, I think.
Wow.
Just doing that more and more, and I'd already been singing a lot at church and stuff like that. Then went to college to play basketball and do music. Not a great combination. Holy cow! 5:30 a.m. workouts with the basketball team, and then 4 or 5 ensembles my freshman year, my sophomore year, just nuts. I don't
that's crazy.
I wouldn't be awake right now if I was living that life.
Facts.
But went to 2 different Nazarene schools, Southern Naz and then Northwest Nazarene. And God literally allowed me to just stumble into my first job at a great church, a good sized church too for a kid.
Yeah.
And so my wife, Julie, and I, we got married at that time when I was in the NNU, Nampa, Idaho area.
Hey.
Anyways, so we just jumped right in. And then we've now been on staff at 3 different churches. We were in Idaho first there at a church called Meridian Valley Shepherd. Okay. Then we moved back across the country. I've lived all over the country too.
Yeah.
Tennessee, we were in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is right on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky, right by Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Okay. So a lot of Army families. So for me, that was comfortable. Right. I had a lot of folks there. Right. Then God brought us to Ohio. So that's what got us up here. We served with Pastor Wendell Brown, who's now the NCO, North Central Ohio DS, and had an amazing run there together. Julie and I ended up staying on staff 14 and a half years at that church. And then just 2 years ago, right before Easter, we took our first lead pastorate at Freedom Church in Sunbury, which for those of you that don't know where that is, it's north of Columbus, north of Polaris. And anyways, just been a totally different ride, but super thankful for all these years of leading, learning obviously lots and lots of things along the way. But just super thankful that God has kept his hand on us in spite of what everybody goes through. Really hard seasons, really some dark seasons, major ministry ups and downs, things that where we could have been drug under with the undertow, but God kept us, God held us. I was talking with a really, really good close friend one time, and it was just kind of a tough season. Yeah. And I've never thought for 1 second that God had left me, turned his back on me. I know he doesn't do that. I probably turned my back a few times, right? And made some of my own selfish choices along the way, but he never left me. But I've just always felt like I've had this insanely blessed life. And this friend, mentor was saying to me, he said, man, basically he said, I want to stop you right there. He said, you have had a favored life.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I'd never used that kind of terminology, right? It kind of sounds weird to say about ourselves anyways, but I was like, you are 100% correct. Now, favorite hasn't been easy. Right.
Doesn't mean easy ride at all.
No, but man, he has not only saved me, right, as a son of God, as a child of God now, but he has saved me from myself. He has saved me from roads that we know stories, right, of different people, families, people in ministry, and he has saved me from all of that. And just since I was little, and it actually goes along with anybody that knows Strength Finder stuff, one of my top 5 is belief. And it's funny because I didn't know the wording and the terminology about that kind of stuff, but for years, my whole life leading up, I just always had this, I know that I know that I know Jesus is it.
Right.
There is no other way. It doesn't matter how hard days get, no matter how dark days get, things that we've been through, friends went through, our churches went through, didn't matter. I just always have known. And now fast forward to 43, I guess, when we started as the lead pastors at our church, our why, our 3-word phrase that we say about everything we say it every week is Jesus changes everything.
Yep.
And so we start from that premise. We live that way personally with, again, we don't have perfect, prepackaged life. We still don't do the meal planning thing. We're terrible. It's 5:57. What are we having for dinner? But in terms of the eternal things, the things that matter the most, we do believe, I believe Jesus changes everything. And he's still in the business of doing that. So there you go. 40 plus years of life and ministry and pastoring. And I didn't say it much. I did mention my wife, Julie, my amazing wife. She's my best friend,
she's
partner.
Awesome.
One of the things, if anybody in ministry, anybody at all, actually, even if you're not in ministry, she's just always had this, and she lives by it because she's not married to a perfect guy, but she's never talked poorly about me to anyone.
Wow. That's huge.
And she encourages other spouses. Yeah. Like, hey, look, you're going to be mad at your spouse at least once, if not once a week.
Right.
Once a day on the good weeks. But you're going to work through it. You're going to forgive. You're going to pray through. You're going to be like, I know I'm sorry I was a jerk. I'm sorry I said that. I shouldn't have said that. But those people that you told that stuff to, they don't see the resolution.
Exactly.
All they remember was the conflict.
Yep.
And so if that helps anybody, if that's all that anybody gets out of this from today, and that's not just for ministry folks, that's for everybody.
That's everybody.
Like, protect your spouse.
Yep.
That's one of the, maybe we should add that into everybody's vows, right?
Right.
You know, like,
Right.
I will never say anything bad about you to anyone else.
Right.
Even to parents, which I know is really hard for some people.
Yep.
Woo! But sorry if you didn't wear your steel-toed boots in this episode. But
you ruffled some feathers on that one, baby. But it's good.
But you can't.
Right.
Because nobody else is putting their head on the pillow next to you at night. At least they shouldn't be.
Right.
It's just you two, and you've got to protect each other.
Yeah.
And I'm super thankful for a wife that has always done that, conveyed that, encouraged others, encouraged me, and protected me in the process. Because when you're in front of people all the time, if just little things go out, who knows what the enemy could do to twist it all up. And anyways.
Yeah. He seeps through the smallest of cracks.
Yes.
And if we open the door a little bit, he's quick to jump in there.
So I have an amazing spouse, best friend, partner for life, and then two amazing kids, Lydia and Ezekiel. They are my daughter just turned 14 a couple of days ago. My son's about to turn 6. Yes, 8-year gap there. And super blessed with an amazing family. And
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you just got your first dog.
Oh my goodness, man. What a great choice. Guys, if anybody wants life advice, we are not your people. We just bought a dog. We are selling our house, buying another house. My daughter's getting ready to go to high school. We just flew to Washington for a family wedding. All of this in like 5 weeks.
It's crazy.
It was like, great. So there you go. Life advice.
Yep,
everybody
that's what
listening.
we said. It's like we picked, the perfect season of life to get another addition of chaos into it is let's just add a little small creature that knows nothing and doesn't understand it.
And can't even speak more than 200 words in their whole life.
Right. You're dope smart. I love it.
Exactly.
Well, as I'm listening to your story too, one of the things that I love hearing and would be curious, and I'm sure other people are too, is worship ministry is a calling, and like pastoring is a calling.
100%.
Because if you're getting into this business for the fame or the money, you picked the wrong business, bud.
Wrong career.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you really think that you want people to like you. Don't pick this ministry life. Don't do it.
I never did that personally. We're talking about other people
Yeah,
today.
exactly.
This for everybody else.
Right, exactly. But what would you say, for this to be a calling on your life? Do you remember, could you recall, was there a moment? Was it something that just kind of happened over time? Can you retell the story of like when you felt like God called you to do this?
Yeah, definitively 14 and 17. 14 just kind of had those moments. My mom was basically my best friend growing up and had a lot of great chats, and she's just got so much wisdom and it's from reading the Word, being in the Word her whole life, and so just being close to the Lord. So we'd have these chats, and I just remember back to this one night we had this amazing conversation, and I've never said this. I don't think I've said it on air, maybe not, but she just said to me, she was like, Zachary, she would say my full name, right? And she was like, you could be the next Billy Graham. And it was like, whew, that's kind of a, big deal, heavy. And it's always been this thing. Now it's over 30 years ago, right? It's been this positively haunting thing, right? That's bounced around in my head. And so that was definitely on the radar. All of our family, in some way, shape, or another, been serving or been pastors or whatever in different lanes of our family. And then 17, Sunday night church, if anybody doesn't know what that is, that used to be a thing. And we were there, and I'd actually invited my math teacher from high school. And she was there with me. She was a believer, but she wanted to come to our church. And the Lord just moved something in my spirit that night. My mom and dad were leading the service, which was the case a lot. But that night, for what I can visualize right now where I was under the balcony, right? So it's barely like even 8 feet. And then I was under the spot where the little support beam. So it was even lower, and I'm 6'4" for those who can't tell. But anyways, it was just so vivid. And I knew that night at that Sunday night service that God was calling me to worship ministry.
Wow.
Undoubtedly, unequivocally, nothing else. Like that was it. And for years, my wife would just tell people, she was like, he's the anomaly. Like he just knew exactly what he was supposed to do, and he's only done that.
Right.
I didn't change my major 12 times. I didn't, like it was just, and that's not a put down on anybody. It's just kind of like, it's part of that unique, maybe connected to some of that favor stuff we talked about earlier. But yeah, that was it. And
that's
then
huge.
I was off to the races from there.
Yeah, that's huge. And it is rare. Like it is an anomaly because a lot of people feel a call, especially early on in their life. Like, I look at my story, and I think I just started I don't know how to describe it. It was one of those, like, having these conversations on the podcast kind of opened up memories for me.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And I think it was Hennessy was the one that brought it up, and this would have been 2 or 3 weeks now, of a memory for when I was 13. So this was like right before I started making some pretty bad life choices with, my addictions and my party life and all that. And I was at a summer camp, and we were in a breakout session, and I only went because I knew the drummer of this camp was going to be there. I was like, I want to hang out with this guy. He looks cool. I remember, and like all the little details started coming back. Like, I remember the picture he had custom printed on his kick drum head. I remember the smell in the room. I remember the color of the carpet. And I'm sitting in there, and they're talking all about like how you lead as a worship person. And I'm like, well, I'm a drummer. At the time, I barely touched a guitar at that point in my life. So I'm like, I'm a drummer. And so I asked, like, how do you lead from the drums? Like, how do you, how can you be a leader if you're in a behind the scenes role?
What a great question.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I felt really smart.
Seriously.
It was probably honestly like I was 13 and I just wanted to be heard. But I did. I was just kind of like, how do you do it? I want. Let's turn the attention to Zack for a minute, the 13-year-old kid. But this 13-year-old kid had zero self-confidence. He didn't think he could be a leader. He was just the drummer. I'm always just going to be the behind the scenes guy. And I remember the director of the camp, his name was Bennett. And I didn't know this guy from Adam. I know he was the big Bennett, and he ran the camp. And he pointed me out in a room of 100 kids, and he said, Zack, you're going to lead thousands someday. And I was like, you're an idiot. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Jesus loves you, but you're an idiot.
Exactly. I'm like, I just asked about being a drummer. Like, I literally the question was not how do I lead lots of people? It's how do I lead at all?
Wow.
And so having people see something in you at an early age, and then my story, I went off the rails. I didn't follow that calling on my life in that moment. I went off and did my own thing. So to have someone like yourself who got that call early on, stuck with it, stuck with God's plan, it's rare. And so I commend you for that. It's a big deal. And maybe an encouragement for some people, because this is not a diss on you Christians who have said this, because I love you. But one of my least favorite comments I ever get in ministry is when people come up and they say, Zack, I just wish I had a testimony like yours. It's just such a powerful testimony. I've been to church my whole life. I've never done anything. My story isn't important. And I'm like, no, yours is the most important. Like, that's great. My story is my story because it reaches those people. There's so many people out there who are in your shoes that are saying, I've lived a great life. Why do I need God? It's like, no, you can
100%.
walk with him
100%
from the day one on. And so I think your story is hugely important and very rare, because not a lot of people stick with it.
And it's actually just been this last 12 months or so, actually thinking about that, and now being a lead pastor, shifting from that staff role, to that lead role, very different and not more important.
Right.
It's easy to think that. It's super easy to think that. But God has even used that and sending us to a church that was much smaller than what we were at before. And so just all these pieces and how he's using that. But anyways, what was I trying to say? In the last 12 months, just thinking about, it was like I was reading something. It was probably Craig Groeschel. For those of you who don't know, I love his books and leadership podcasts and everything.
He's the man.
Everything they do. And by the way, Life Church, they're the ones that produce the YouVersion Bible app for people that don't know, and give it all away for free. All this stuff.
Didn't they just cross over a billion?
Back in November.
It's crazy.
A billion unique user downloads.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So anyways, if you didn't open your YouVersion today, do it. All right. Yes. But anyways, it was something he said about God using how he got saved. A guy handed him a little Gideon New Testament in college. And that's basically, God used that moment. He ends up out like in a softball field somewhere, right? Like crying out to God. He'd been partying and drinking and doing everything. Anyways, and how God used that. And so out of that is what birthed the YouVersion Bible app, right? Yeah. Years later. Little did he know, obviously, that God was going to use that.
Where that was going to go.
Well, for me, I was like, I was kind of in the same boat that you were talking about. People like, God, I don't have like that cool testimony. Nobody's ever going to come and ask me to come to their camp or their church. Dude, you got to share your story, And over time, it was like people had kind of spoken that into me. Man, you don't want that kind of testimony. And so it was just this last year, Craig was talking about something about how God had used his life and his story to propel the vision that God has for them, the unique vision that God has for them in Life Church and everything. Yeah. And for whatever reason that day, it just caught my attention really differently. It was like, God was like, hey, listen up, dude. What do you think? Because I've said these kind of things, but it was God refining it and putting it into a package. He was like, what do you think we want for our kids and our teenagers? Do we want them to have a tragedy into triumph kind of testimony?
Right.
Shout out to tragedy and triumph. But anyways, or do we want them to have a testimony of God's keeping grace? Mm-hmm. Not that for those who don't have that story, like God was like, peace out, I'll see you when you're 27.
Right.
That's not how it works. It's our choices and
He gives us that free will.
and crazy external circumstances, some outside of our control.
Yep.
But it was like, what do we want? And so God has used that in me at our church. Like, look, I don't have some crazy specific vision. We're going to reach 4,326 people in this lane. And then it's like, no. I was like, the vision I think that God is giving us here at Freedom Church is like, we want our kids and our teens to grow up realizing life is hard enough.
Yeah.
So I need to start choosing the way of Jesus now.
Yep. 100%.
Because that will set up a life of disciplines and you don't realize it until you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, right? They're like, oh man, this was like compound interest.
Yep.
Because spiritual compound interest is a real thing.
100%.
And God just builds that up. So anyway, for me, that's just been, it was a really cool reshaping of God using that to show me like, this is how I want you to lead.
Right.
Because don't you want that for your kids? Zach, right? You know, like, yes.
Yep.
I don't want them falling off the wagon.
Yeah.
I want them following Jesus forever.
Right.
And nothing else.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's my heart on that.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Well, I had two more questions for you. And one,
Yes.
I think is a perfect segue for this conversation we're having right now. So you were a worship pastor for so long. And we're talking about calling, right? And so now you have shifted into a lead pastor role. And I struggle with this sometimes too, because if I'm just being honest, and maybe it's as insider baseball for people listening, but like there's that unwritten thing in ministry where it's like, oh, you've reached a certain age, like you've been a youth pastor for all these years. Are you ready to step up to the big leagues? All right, Zach, you're closer to 40 than you are 30 now. So have you thought about, taking a church somewhere? And I've been struggling with that. And thankfully the Lord's been speaking to me positively on that.
Yep.
But there was a season where I'm like, dang it, they're right. Like I am not gonna forever be the young worship guy. And in fact, I'm probably not that now at all. But I don't feel called to be a lead pastor right now. I just don't. And so what was that moment for you where what the Lord was saying, like, hey, I'm not discrediting your calling. I'm not, saying that you had it wrong all these years, but I feel like God shifts our calling. He shifts what he is calling us to do and uses our story of what we have done to prepare us for what's next. So what did that look like for you when you were transitioning into that lead pastor role?
So two quick things. One, a funny response about the job. I did have people in the past, good, great, strong Christians, basically ask me like, when are you going to go for the real job?
Right.
Like, it's like, well, this kind of feels like the real job, anyways.
Right.
So I knew what they meant, and I would jaw back and forth. But anyways, so that's just for back to your inside baseball folks. But then no, and I'll do my best to do it, to give the short story of this. I've had people since I was in my early 20s ask me if I'd thought about it. I think a lot of it had to do with I'm a tall, demonstrative presence on the platform.
You're a big personality.
And a big person. So people just assume, oh, well, you must be. And I was like, no, I must be a worship leader. You know what I mean? Like that was my life. And I loved it. Every minute of it, all the things. And so watching that. And so I'd have these questions. Well, then I shared about my boss, and I call him that's a term of endearment. Like when I text and when we talk on the phone, I'm like, hey boss, what's up? Anyways. And now he's my boss again, actually, technically. So, pretty cool. But he became the DS of NCO. And so in between our church, we had 364 days lead pastor to lead pastor.
Wow.
Had people ask all throughout that process, like, hey, dude, are you going to put your name in the hat? I mean, I'd been on the platform at a church of 1,000 plus for a while at that point. So, and people, what do they want? They want a lead pastor. They don't like that gray question mark time. So and I was like, thanks, I appreciate it. I'm not sure you really know what it takes to lead a church of 1,000 plus. Like there's, oh, by the way, it's not 1,000 people where you have pay and punishment.
Right.
It's 1,000 people who are just choosing to show up on their own voluntarily. And you pay about like 150th of that, for your staff, but anyways, all that to say, kept getting those questions. Well, then I had some other people that had been really strong, like business leaders, guys I respected, guys that if I was honest, some of them I was kind of like, I didn't even know you liked me, but you know,
Right.
I mean, they're just, you know, cause I'm just the music dude, right?
Yeah.
To a lot of people. And, they had all been amazing supporters of our church. They had never said anything. I'm just talking about stuff from my own little, you know, insecurities, you know?
Right.
And, one of the guys, he was like, man, have you thought about this? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, have you thought about doing it? I was like, you know, like being a pastor. And I was like, I thought. He was like, no, like here. And I'm like, this is a very successful guy, strong, sold out Jesus follower. And I'm like, So what that spawned in me was like, well, I've had a lot of people ask me, maybe I need to start processing this a little bit, right? When you hear things enough, right? It's kind of like, maybe I should pay attention.
Is this God maybe saying something through a lot of people?
Yeah. It's like, hello, anybody in there? Anybody listening? So I started this document called What If I Became a Senior Pastor?
I remember this.
And it's now like, it turned into, by the time we took the lead pastor at Freedom Church, it's like 22 pages.
Wow.
And just stuff that God had been dropping in my head. And some periods of that time, it was like drinking from a fire hose, right? With the Holy Spirit. Like, holy cow, and I'm typing or talk to text, whatever, you know, praise God for technology on those things.
Yes.
But, and it was like, I don't sit down and read that now every day, hardly ever. But it was just like God birthing this in me. And there were multiple opportunities before Freedom Church,
Right.
Many that were larger. And I've shared that with our church even. And it was like, because this has never been about, hey, everybody tune into the Zach Carpenter show.
Right.
Like, and it's easy. The devil loves to use that when you're a musician and you're a performer, you're an artist. He loves to use that. Like, dude, look at all these people looking at you. Isn't this great? And obviously in our humanness, we're like, yeah, it is, dude.
It's awesome.
And you're like, oh yeah, it's about Jesus. And it like, and you know, it's quick. And the Lord allows for moments of humility to come. And he's kind of like, let's just sprinkle in a little bit of that. And you're like, oh, my bad. And so anyways, it was just this process of getting all this out of like, okay, what does this look like? All these opportunities started coming, and on paper, some of them looked fantastic.
Right.
And dude, it was as clear as like, and the people at home are going to hear this, hard door shut. Another one, hard door shut. Like, and I was like, okay. And then as typical, when it rains, it pours. There were a bunch, and then there was nothing. It was desert. And it was like, okay, it was just a season. Maybe the Lord is just allowing us to be tested. Do we trust him? Because I'd always said, it doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter what size of church. Lord, you have my yes. Before I even know the question. And that sounds really cool in a message, and it even looks good on a bumper sticker.
Right.
Until it's real life.
Yeah.
And so in a conversation one day with Wendell, who was a DS, and we just talked all the time. This wasn't like, hey, would you like to come, interview? We were talking, and he was like, well, hey, speaking of which, whatever conversation we were in, he was like, how would you feel about thinking about being the pastor of this church, the one where we are now? And I was like, what would that look like? And he was like, for real? And I was like, yeah, what would it look like? And that was a Saturday morning. Julie and I did something very different this time. We'd always prayed. We'd always made like pros and cons lists, whatever. This time we didn't do any of the pros and cons list. We didn't ask our parents. We didn't talk. We literally talked to Jesus and talked to Wendell, like a couple of questions that week.
Wow.
And by the next Saturday, we hadn't gone to the church. We hadn't interviewed. It was just a resounding 100% yes.
Wow.
And that was it. And so obviously there's a lot of details and things between then and now, but it was just kind of like, it was a process.
Yes.
For us. I think for most people, it's a scope. It's an arc. It's not just a pinpoint rifle. In one moment, all of it happened. It does happen like that for some people. Right. But I think it's a matter of listening and watching. And so anyway, so here we are, different season. But also I have a great understanding because of what God allowed me to experience before this of what it feels like from the staff seat.
Yes. Of,
wanting to feel like you're a part of the team versus a minion.
Yeah.
And I had killer pastors, and I know I reference Wendell a lot, but he grabbed us at a time when we had come out of a really dark chapter, hard season, and just the way that he mentored me and allowed me to be who God wired me to be, while he was great with providing guardrails, because he's just amazingly talented and disciplined and regimented, and yet allowed me and my artistic creative tendencies that didn't always love guardrails. Right. He still helped me to stay in that and to really be, so all that, again, just being able to see, all right, what would I want from my lead pastor?
Right.
And am I going to get it all right in the coming years and decades? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I hope I get more right than not.
Yeah.
Because of what God's allowed me to see as I look back, so that looking forward, be like, hey, dude, you said you would never do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like little things. If I can just throw this out there real quick and I'll shut up.
Sure.
Not saying the word my about the church, about your church leadership team, about the staff, about the board. They're not my board.
Right.
They're not my staff. I might be the boss.
Right.
In an infrastructure and org chart kind of way, but there's only one boss.
Yep.
There's only one real boss, and it's his church. It's not mine. And so that's one thing. And there've been times over the last couple of years I'd start to because what do you say? I've got a meeting with my board.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, nope. I mean, I'm like, nope. We've got a board meeting, or I've got a meeting with the board, because the ground is level at the foot of the cross.
Yep.
So when we go to meet Jesus, me and the board members, congregation members, anybody, planet Earth, right?
Right.
Kneeling at the same spot. And so that's just one of those big things for me that the Lord was like, hey, you said you were never going to say this. So there's been 2 or 3 times the last 2 years. I'm like, oh, my bad. So anyway.
That's huge.
But yeah.
I love it. Well, we got time for one more question.
Do it.
And I did remember to preface this one. So
yes.
I'm learning. I'm learning.
Hey, dude, we all are.
Lord's working on me. So something that I've been processing, I'm getting ready to enter into my 12th year of full-time worship ministry, which feels bonkers. And, with this transition we've had with Noah taking a new job, who was our Johnstown campus pastor, it's really kind of made me reflect and pause and really, reflect on my leadership and what are some things I did right? What are some things I did wrong? How can I be better moving forward? And it got me thinking, if I could go back and talk to Zack 12 years ago, who was setting up his office at Grove City, not knowing what in the world he was about to get himself into, what would I tell myself back then that would set me up for a better future in ministry? And I'm just curious what that looks like for other pastors, worship people specifically, just because that's our world. But if you could go back all those years ago and talk to yourself, sit yourself down and have a hard conversation day one, what would you tell yourself?
That's a great question. That's a funny question. And what you sent me, I immediately had an answer. But as I look at the scope of our time, specifically our time in Circleville at Heritage Church,
right?
Because we were there for so long,
right? It's a long tenure,
creeping on 15 years. And I don't think I would change what I did in the beginning of just going for it, charging the hill, Satan, we are coming for you.
Yeah,
we're charging the gates of hell with a water pistol, let's go. It's this weird balance. I don't want to take that away. Because God used that, and God used a lot of my naivete and 28 into 29-year-old energy, and thought I was going to change the world by myself, kind of thing. And you learn all along the way, oh yeah, again, there's only one Messiah. You're not him, all the things, but you still keep going. Yeah. Right 2 to 3 years before I left, we started a thing in worship rehearsals. And it was... I started the name out kind of as a joke, because if anybody remembers Meet the Parents and the Circle of Trust.
Yep.
All right. Yep. So by the way, there's a new one coming out this summer. Hey, we'll take money promo for the we'll
sponsor us.
We'll put your logo on the podcast. Just throw some money our way. All right. But anyways, so I threw it out. I was like, all right, guys, because I told them we were going to start this new study, and we hadn't really done that a whole lot. But it was from where I'd been in the Word, and then there was this other book that was kind of like a spiritual warfare book, but it was 52 weeks of devos.
Oh, cool.
For a worship ministry. And so I had used that with choir a little bit in the past when we had choir, and then I was like, I kind of want to do that, and then God led us to kind of do our own thing. But I jokingly said, because we went down on the floor, got off the platform, right, because it's easy to do everything on the stage. I was like, let's put our chairs together, and I was like, let's have the circle of trust. And so they were kind of laughing, and it was kind of like, I was like, no, but I do want it to be that. I want it, a place where we dive in, we trust each other. And so we started it. And I'm saying this to say that I wish that I would have done this from day one, 14 and a half years before we started there. Right. That the last 3 years were probably some of the most significant week to week, deep dive spiritual discussions that we had as a team. Yeah. Because you operate from assumption a lot when you're on a platform. Yep. We all love Jesus. We all want to glorify God. Yeah, life happens. We've got stuff. But all right, let's go. Let's do this. We're going to lay all of our life aside. And it's kind of like, no, life is not aside.
Right.
It's happening in the middle of it. We bring us. It's not like there's like an 80% scrim that you walk through and it's
Right.
like only the 20% of decent things from this week are walking onto the stage, right? It's all of us. And so we started having these discussions, and I think he would be okay with it. One of our bass players at our last church, awesome man of God. I called him the sage. And he just when he spoke, he was hilariously funny. So he always had great jokes. But when he spoke seriously, it was like, everybody was like, you guys better shut up and listen,
Right.
you know? And he came to me 2 or 3 months after we started the Circle of Trust. And he was like, man, I got to be honest. We started this, and I was like, are you kidding me? Are we going to sit here and like share our feelings? And I got to unpack that, you know, and all this kind of
Right.
stuff. And he was like, it is my favorite part of rehearsal every week now. And I was like, all right, Lord,
That's so good.
help me to not ever forget this.
Yeah.
And so that is one major shift, because out of that, then as a team, right, you're able to pour from, we know these phrases and they're unfortunately cliche, but they're good. We're able to pour from cups that are full, not cups that are polished and shiny.
Yep.
Right? Because the perfection we talk about as Jesus followers is a different kind of, it's not a worldly perfection, right? It's an internal thing that the Holy Spirit's doing. And so it's not about looking perfect on the outside. It's about allowing God to keep perfecting your heart. Well, the only way you can do that in a world of darkness is to be surrounded by people of light.
Yep.
It's the only way. And so anyway, so that is one major thing. So anybody out there listening, watching, like, just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be pretty. You don't have to have a perfect study, but you have to be a tour guide though that has been there.
Yep.
You can't take this trip to the middle of the jungle in Africa where you've never been and expect to lead a
people where you've never been yourself.
You can't do it. And I know we know that, but it's like, it's crucial.
It's true.
Your performance self runs out.
Yeah.
And your real self shows up.
100%.
And so in that season, that was also a major shift in my own personal time with the Lord. Not ever prepared. I wasn't preaching then either.
Right.
So it was just diving into the Word more regularly, better than I ever had, because it was like, no, this is the only way to know the Lord, who is the Word, is to be in the Word. So a lot of it was coming out of that.
That's so good. That's so good.
That's it, man.
I love it, buddy. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We got to wrap it up
Absolutely.
here. But we just want you all to know, I mean, that I think is the perfect way to end this, because we say this on the podcast all the time, but I love hearing it from other people too, because I feel like we don't talk enough about it, you know, that we need to be leading from a place of overflow. And we can't lead from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. So what we do on Sunday morning is just a piece, just a very small piece of what living in the Word, what living for the Lord actually looks like.
100.
And so that's our encouragement for you, man. Maybe you're just a Sunday morning Christian. We want to encourage you that Christ is there 24/7. He wants to be with you. He wants a relationship with you. And that doesn't just happen for an hour on Sundays. So dig into your Word, spend time with Him, and watch your life transform. If you have any questions on how we can help you do that, please reach out to us at podcast@shepnaz.org. And Zach, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
We love
Thanks
you,
for having
buddy. We love you guys. Have a great week.
This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.